Well, the video I made about is Geno Worth of the Square Enix to put in Smash Brothers is one of my more popular videos, so you know what that means? It's time for a sequel! And obviously, keeping in theme with the previous video, we have to choose a Square Enix character with strange ownership rights. So, of course, I'm talking about Sora from Kingdom Hearts. Wow, Square Enix, you have a lot of beloved characters that technically don't fully belong to you, do you? Now, this video isn't necessarily just going to be about Disney or just going to be about Square Enix, because I think it's pretty obvious that Square Enix would be interested in having another character in Smash, given they already have two. And I think there's enough videos out there talking about Disney and how willing they are to loan their characters out to other companies to be in the world of gaming. But this is going to be specifically about Square Enix and Disney together, and if it's worth it for the both of them jointly to put Sora into the game. Now, I know a lot of you are going to be thinking, well, hold on, Power Man, doesn't Disney technically own, like, the full use rights of Sora? Like, couldn't they just, you know, bypass Square Enix, just go straight to Nintendo? I mean, wasn't there like a cell phone game in the mid-2000s that Square Enix didn't even know existed, that Disney made all on their own? And while that is true, in my research, I've kind of found that Disney, when they want to use Sora, they generally ask for Square Enix's sort of blessings in general when they do something like that. So I highly doubt that for something like a Smash character, which could bring in this much amount of money, that Disney would leave Square Enix out of this. Oh my god, talk about dick move, man. Like, could you imagine Disney just pushed aside Square Enix for Sora, putting him in Smash Brothers? Like, oh yeah, you guys were the ones who, you know, designed the character, created the character, created the games that people love, and are basically almost entirely the reason why people want Sora in Smash Brothers to begin with. Fuck you, you don't get any of the money. Listen, I don't see any reality where Disney would absolutely destroy their partnership with Square Enix just so they can make putting Sora into Smash Brothers easier. Now, I've seen a lot of people be, I think, a little overconfident, because there's been some journalists that have asked, like, hey, Disney, and then, hey, Square Enix, would you be okay with putting Sora in Smash Bros? Both of them said yes, obviously. And so people take this as, like, definitive proof that both of them would greenlight it. But the thing is that I think a lot of people forget is that one company can say yes, and another company can say yes, independent of each other. But when it actually comes time to get around the negotiating table and trying to figure out how this could work, both of them could want the character in Smash Brothers, but they could both totally fight with each other and basically make the addition of the character impossible due to the different things that they want out of it. God, I could just imagine two old Japanese men, one from Square Enix and one from Disney, just fucking bickering all day about the most fucking minor bullshit about Sora, and then Masahiro Sakurai just sitting there with a lawyer, just like sitting there wondering why these people are wasting his time. But okay, let's just assume, right, that Disney and Square Enix aren't going to be at each other's throats. That they're not going to argue about the design of Sora, or the way he's going to be represented, or what music, or what stages, or blah, blah, blah. But the thing with Square Enix and Disney is that both of them have had significant contributions to making Sora who he is. And I highly doubt that both of them can agree to splitting up the same percentage that normally would just go to one third-party publisher like Capcom, and then taking that and then splitting that, you know, 50-50 perfectly. Because if Square Enix is going to be asking for what any other third party is asking for, percentage-wise, and they have Disney involved, Disney's not going to take 0%, okay? It doesn't matter if they take 1%, like a little bit more compared to another Smash character, or they take, you know, they double the licensing costs. That it's going to be more expensive than other third-party characters in Smash. And this is the kind of the thing I think people deep down know why Sora would be really hard to get for the game. And I can't really blame them for thinking this. Now, one thing that Nintendo could do is that they could just charge more for Sora compared to other characters. And so that way they can offset the licensing cost by selling it to the people who only want the individual character, and then Square Enix and Disney could both be happy about that. But I can't really imagine that Nintendo, who has basically treated every other Smash DLC character very, value per dollar worth the same, and similarly the Fighters Passes have been a very similar, dollar per content worth, that all of a sudden they would just charge a bunch for Sora, like, out of nowhere. And if they charge more for Sora in worth, then that cost has to be kind of distributed across the Fighters Pass. And so, does that mean that one of the characters that we're gonna get in the future, hypothetically if Sora was in, that one of the other characters would be, would cost less? But the only other option is Nintendo sort of reducing their own cut of the DLC to make room for Disney. But that sounds like such a bad precedent to set for Nintendo, and basically just opens the door wide open for people to bitch about the cuts that Nintendo is getting off of DLC, and that they're cutting back because it's special privilege. If you're an indie developer and you're selling DLC on the Switch, and Square Enix and Disney over here have Sora, why is it Nintendo gets to take less of a cut, but you're over here struggling and Nintendo takes a bigger cut? Now, there is a third option, but I don't really consider it all that viable for reasons I'll get into, that Sora could be so popular that he would basically by himself sell tons of Fighters Passes and outsell individually all the other characters in the Fighters Pass, that it could satisfy Disney and Square Enix sharing the same percentage. And this isn't necessarily an unprecedented strategy for Nintendo and Square Enix to do with Smash characters, because I'm pretty sure that Cloud was a best-selling DLC character in Smash 4. We don't have any numbers, but I would not be surprised. And Hero, I'm sure, sold tons of Fighters Passes by himself in Japan. However, the thing is that when you look at the worldwide sales numbers of both Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest, either of them are substantially larger than Kingdom Hearts in total, and that doesn't necessarily translate into sales numbers, but I wouldn't be surprised if it has some impact on it. And Kingdom Hearts also has another company that you have to deal with aside from Square Enix. So you have a property that is less popular and more of a pain in the ass to deal with. Now, this all sounds like doom and gloom and stuff, but you know what? Let's look at the opposite side of the coin. Let's look at what vested interest both Square Enix and Disney would have, that they basically would put aside their differences and put Sora in Smash Brothers. Now, one of the most interesting things about Square Enix gaining from putting Sora in Smash Brothers is that they potentially could gain the most from putting their character in Smash Bros. Compared to a lot of other companies. Now, there has been Kingdom Hearts games on previous Nintendo handhelds, but the problem is that just due to the nature of Kingdom Hearts, that every game needs to tie back to the main story in some way, that basically it's kind of inaccessible for someone who doesn't own other platforms aside from Nintendo ones to really love and appreciate these characters. And so these spin-offs, I think most of the people who bought them were people who played Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 on the PlayStation 2 and just happened to have a Nintendo handheld and then bought those spin-off Kingdom Hearts games. And I'm just gonna be brutally honest here. Do you really think that the stories of 358 Over 2 Days, or Recoded, or Chain of Memories, or DDD, do you really think that someone who had never played Kingdom Hearts before, that had picked up one of these games, games that were integral of one another and relied on your understanding of the general Kingdom Hearts lore and on plot twists that relied on you knowing these characters and then they turn out to be somebody else. Like, did anybody play these games and then was like, yeah, you know, I'm a big fan of Kingdom Hearts now, I'm gonna go buy the other games? I highly doubt it. And so while Kingdom Hearts has had a presence on Nintendo platforms, I would personally make the argument that the sort of mind share and understanding about Kingdom Hearts among sort of the Nintendo audience is basically non-existent. What's interesting though is that Square Enix does have an interest in growing the Kingdom Hearts series. I mean, they established new development studios for more Kingdom Hearts games after 3's success, and I believe they recently put out all the HD remixes on Xbox One. And considering that the Switch hasn't gotten any HD remixes yet, and is also a more viable platform to grow an established base of Kingdom Hearts fans on than something like, you know, the Xbox, that I think Square Enix does have a vested interest in creating Switch library of Kingdom Hearts games. So what's the easiest way for Square Enix to start building a fan base and get interested in buying multiple HD remixes and potential ports of games? By putting a character in Smash. And so it's less direct shilling of one singular game or maybe a handful of games, that it might be more that Square Enix finds a whole new audience for the Kingdom Hearts games, that because previous Nintendo systems either weren't financially viable enough or were technologically underpowered or had weird controllers, that Square Enix finally might see the Switch as something viable for Kingdom Hearts and is using Sora as sort of the door. And it's kind of a similar deal with like the Nintendo-Microsoft relationship, where Banjo was kind of the result of the two companies sort of working together, Microsoft wanting to sort of expand outside their console and reach an audience that had not really sort of existed before for them. But the difference with Square Enix is that Microsoft only really seems to be interested in porting more recent titles like Cuphead and Ori, but with Square Enix, they have like all the Kingdom Hearts HD remixes just kind of sitting there. And so for Square Enix, it is so incredibly easy for them to just build up an audience really quickly by putting out all the HD remixes on Switch. Now, what does Disney gain out of all this, right? Disney doesn't even have proper console game studios anymore. What does Disney potentially see out of putting Sora into Smash Brothers? If you know anything about Disney, is that they have their fingers in a lot of pies, right? Cruise lines, resorts, you know, animated films, live action films. And right now in video games, they are licensing out their properties to a bunch of different companies to work on. So you have things like Marvel being worked on by Square Enix and Star Wars being worked on by EA. And that's fine and good for getting more people interested in Marvel and getting more people interested in Star Wars, but there really hasn't been all that much that in gaming recently that has gotten Disney's attention to what I would call kind of like their quote-unquote core branding, like kind of like the whimsy and the wonder and the fantasy magic and the Mickey Mouse type stuff, you know what I mean? And since time immemorial, people have compared Nintendo and Disney, and some even claim that Nintendo is the Disney of video games. And so I can't really think of a better gaming audience to have Sora be introduced to and then sort of be able to promote that kind of branding to. And yeah, I know that Nintendo is working with Universal on making Super Nintendo World, and on paper that might, you know, not quite fit in with the Disney brand synergy thing, but my counter argument to that is, okay, and like Disney has so many of their own properties to work on in their own theme parks to give rides and attractions and stuff, that I don't think Disney's butthurt that Nintendo's working with another theme park company so they can make, you know, in the grand scheme of, you know, everything Disney is working on, a very, 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 very minor deal for, you know, DLC for a certain character in one game. What do I think? is it worth it for Square Enix and Disney to put Sora in Smash Brothers? If Square Enix and Disney cannot step all over each other's toes, I would say yes. And the primary reason I would say yes is because that this would be, I think, easy money for Disney. Because it's an easy check for them to write, and it's an easy check for them to get. And let's just be honest here, you know, if Sora didn't exist, I don't think any gamer would be asking for a game character that came from a studio that was owned by Disney. So they get a pretty easy check for something that they didn't really have that much of a part in. Oh my god, this is such a long-ass video to film. I hope you guys like it. So anyways, guys, that's it, and have a good day.